We look at our starting problem where equals the natural log of minus the square root of squared minus 1. We do this to see what we need to solve. This is our first step to begin the math. We identify that there is an outer function and an inner function. We do this to understand how the parts are put together. The rule says function can have another function inside it. We plan to use the chain rule for differentiation. We do this to find the derivative of function with an inside part. The rule says we must differentiate the outside and then multiply by the derivative of the inside. We apply the chain rule by writing 1 divided by minus the square root of squared minus 1 times the derivative of minus the square root of squared minus 1. We do this to start solving the problem. The rule says we must follow the pattern of the chain rule. We note that we need rules for the derivative of and the derivative of square root. We do this to prepare for the next step. The rule says the derivative of is 1 and the derivative of square root uses the power rule. We differentiate the inner part by writing 1 minus 1 divided by 2 times the square root of squared minus 1 times 2. We do this to find the derivative of the inside expression. The rule says we must use the power rule for each part. We simplify the fraction by dividing 2 by 2 times the square root of squared minus 1 to get divided by the square root of squared minus 1. We do this to make the math easier. The rule says when you have the same number on top and bottom of fraction, they cancel out. We write our new expression as 1 divided by minus the square root of squared minus 1 times 1 minus divided by the square root of squared minus 1. We do this to show the simplified inner part. The rule says we can replace parts with their simpler forms. We plan to find common denominator for the terms inside the parentheses. We do this so we can combine them into one fraction. The rule says you need the same bottom number to add or subtract fractions. We combine the terms to get 1 divided by minus the square root of squared minus 1 times the square root of squared minus 1 minus all divided by the square root of squared minus 1. We do this to make the expression shorter. The rule says we can write two parts as one fraction using common denominator. We observe that the top part is the negative of the bottom part of our first fraction. We do this to see how the terms relate. The rule says changing the order of subtraction changes the sign to negative. We cancel the matching terms to get negative 1 divided by the square root of squared minus 1. We do this to reach the final answer. The rule says when you divide number by itself, it becomes 1. We write our final result as the derivative dy dx equals negative 1 divided by the square root of squared minus 1. We do this to finish the problem. This is the correct answer after all the steps.